Hello, my beautiful artists. How are you guys doing today? I'm doing pretty good. And today we are going to be focusing on texture again, specifically how to draw different textures. Last week we focused on some different kinds of textures, what they actually feel like, what something fuzzy feels like, what something smooth feels like, what something hard feels like, or rough. This week we're going to focus on how to draw that. You guys have two different sheets. The one that looks like this is for my 3rd through 5th graders. The one that looks like this is for my pre-K through 2nd. And what you guys will be doing on both of these sheets is, let me start with this one. You'll be writing a kind of texture, so like fuzzy, and then in the box, you'll do your rendition of a fuzzy texture. Smooth, what does that look like? Rough, what does that look like? Feather, what does that look like? Etc. Same thing on here. You guys are going to write the kind of texture you're doing, and then you're going to draw that texture. So soft, what does that look like? Hard, what does that look like? Jagged, that's a good one. Jagged, what does that look like? That's what you guys are going to be doing with me. I'm very excited to see y'all's drawings. So let's start with what texture is again. This is for my older friends, but my younger friends need to listen as well. So let's do the definition of texture. Texture, so that's going to be the first blank. The first blank is texture. Is the way that something feels or how it looks like it would feel. So for my older friends that are watching this video, that is your definition. Texture is the way a surface feels or how it looks like it would feel. So that is the definition of texture. Now let's get into some different kinds. I have made a sheet just of a whole bunch of different textures that I'm going to draw examples of for you. And then when you are making your own, you're just going to choose your 4 or choose your 5. If you're my older friends, younger, older, 4 or 5. And then you are going to do your best and try to show me that texture type. All right, so let's get started on how to make different kinds of texture. We're going to start at the very top, which is a soft texture. Soft texture is actually pretty easy to do. I think the best way to make a soft texture is just kind of by shading. I think it gives off the illusion of something being soft very well. So I'm just going to shade this box in with my pencil using the side of my pencil. And there's a little bit of the white coming through, some of the gray, and I think it just gives it a very soft look. It's pretty simple. So shaded that box, and that would be my rendition of what a soft texture would look like. Let's move on to hard. I'm going to draw some bricks for this one. So the way that you draw bricks, I'm going to make 3 lines. And then you will that's 3 horizontal lines, and then you will make some vertical lines. I always do my bricks in groups of 3. So I have 1, 2, 3. And then you're going to go down and in the middle of each of those boxes. 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm going to go down and in the middle of the boxes. 1, 2, 3. Technically, I can put 1 there too. Nah, that doesn't look good. Don't worry about it. Again, I'm going to go into the middle of the box. 1, 2, 3. And there you go. I've made a brick wall. So again, One more time on that process. I usually do 3 vertical lines, or however many can naturally fit in that box for you. And then you just make a small vertical line in the middle of each of those boxes. Done. Let's move on to fuzzy/furry. So this is a really great texture. I love feeling soft, fuzzy things. And it's actually pretty easy to do. All you need to do is do small lines going up. I always curve my lines a little bit. I think it makes it look more natural when you curve your lines a little bit, because hair doesn't stand straight necessarily. So we're going to fill in this box using this method of doing different lines, different sizes of lines. Mine are pretty uniform and I do multiple layers, but you can do long lines and short lines. And that's fair. Give it a little bit of variety. The main thing is that you want your fur to always be going in the same direction, and don't just scribble. Every line should have a start and an end. You don't want to just like scribble it all together. You want like I said, each line to have a start and an end. Your pencil should leave the page each time you make a new line. And there we go. I have a fuzzy/furry texture. Now we're going to do Ruff. Ruff is pretty simple as well, except I'm just going to make little dot marks. I'm going to half this box if y'all don't mind. I'm just going to make little, like I said, little dot marks throughout this whole thing, because it should give it kind of a rough, grainy texture. Like you'd look at it and you'd think, oh, that would be rough. I'm just going to do this all the way throughout my box. Just these little, I'm going to call them dashes and not dots. It's a little bit different. I want them to be all over. I think that's pretty good. And we have a rough texture. All right. Now we're going to move on to scalloped. You may recognize this word because scalloped/scales is a kind of line that we did at the very beginning of the year. And the way you make a scalloped line is just by making little U's. So I make a U, a U, a U, a U, a U. Now, the thing about scalloped lines is they always cross in a way. So if I have my first line like this, my second line is going to start in the middle of where the peak is. So I'm going to make a U, U, U. And this one I'm going to take all the way over. And then again, I'm going to start in the middle. So U, 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 U. And I'm just touching the middle of each little hill so that I know that I'm doing the process right. Last row. And there we have a scalloped/scales texture. There we go. Now for Bumpy. So Bumpy can be kind of similar to scalloped in a way. We did use kind of like ovals over here. We're going to do circles over here. So I'm just going to make different circles in different sizes because Bumpy is kind of like a raised surface. Your skin can be kind of bumpy sometimes when you get goosebumps. If you've ever looked at goosebumps, they just look like little mini circles. So that's the effect that I'm trying to achieve here. I'm going to just have different sizes of circles, some small, some big, and I'm going to cover my whole box using those little circles. This can also be used for like a stone path, like if you're ever drawing that. This can be used for wall texture, skin of an animal, skin on yourself if you want to be bumpy. I'm going to draw all those little circles. I'm going to stop when I get to this little area filled. My hand is starting to cramp. And there I have a pretty good bumpy texture. So far I've done soft, which was achieved by using the side of my pencil and shaving. I've done hard, in which I created a brick wall. I did rough, which I always think, when I think of something rough, I usually think of sandpaper. So I tried to make it look like what I would imagine sandpaper to feel. Then I did fuzzy / furry, which is done, this is done by doing the little dots and dashes, usually with the end of your pencil. This is done by making your 3 horizontal lines. I mean, you can make as many horizontal lines as you want, and then you make 3 boxes, and then you go in the middle, 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 down, middle, middle, middle. Same thing with scalloped. You make your first couple set of U's, and then you go in the middle, 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 all the way through. And then you have a really cool scalloped or scaly texture. Bumpy is achieved by doing different kinds of circles. You can also do like ovals or small circles, big circles. But I always like to have a little bit of a variety of some big, some medium, some small. Now moving on to woven. So woven is going to be like what you would see with a basket. And we're going to do a process kind of similar to the hard texture one. I'm going to make myself, I'm going to do 3 little sections. Actually, I think that's good too. And then we'll have 3 going up. So I've made myself 2 thin little horizontal rectangles all the way across my box. And the effect of something woven means that it goes under and then over, under and then over. That might seem like it's really hard to achieve, but it actually isn't. So I'm going to start by having 2 small lines that connect here. And I'm going to bring those lines over the next box. Again, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go under, over, under, over, under, over. And then all I have to do to finish the effect is erase the lines here. Yeah, wait. No, these lines. I'm going to erase the lines from my small thin rectangle to give the effect that this one is going under and this one is going over. I'm gonna just, yeah. Re-go over those first couple lines again. And there we go. Woven texture. So again, that process, I made 2 long, thin rectangles. And then I brought 2 lines up to this one to give the effect of it going under. And then I did 2 lines going over this line to make it look like it was going over. Then I erased the lines in the middle of the long, thin rectangle. Is woven. Now for jagged. Jagged is pretty, I mean, I know I keep saying things are simple, but I think jagged really is, because all you need to do is just make little rectangles in different sizes. So I'm just going to make a point and come down, and a whole bunch of different, like I said, sizes of triangles. There's no wrong way to do it. I'm just making, like I said, different sizes of triangles. I can add a little bit more right here. There we go. And that's a pretty good jagged texture. So again, with that process, all I did was just make different little levels of triangles, different peaks, and we have a pretty interesting texture with that. Okay. Moving on to wood. Wood is pretty rough, and I normally would do, if I was going to do a rough drawing, I'd usually do something like tree bark or something, but I decided to give wood its own category because it has a very, I think, distinct feel to it. So I'm going to show you guys how to draw wood grain. Wood grain is achieved by kind of making different sizes of ovals. So you always want to start with your middle dot. Think of this as the heart of your wood grain, and I always color it in. And then the rest of your wood grain is going to come from that middle little oval. You're going to do another oval around it, kind of making something that looks like an eye. And then you just follow that shape all the way through. And what's great about wood grain is the lines, they always end up going their own way. And I love dragging the lines off of the paper. I think it gives it an even more realistic look. And adding a line here or there, just to make it look more realistic. So with this one, I started with my little circle, created an oval around that circle to make a kind of eye shape, and then you just follow that shape. You could, to make it a little easier on yourself, follow that shape throughout and kind of just make a series of ovals around that first dot. I did a little bit different where I changed the line of where it was going to make it look a little more continual. But for these purposes, feel free to do just your middle dot, your oval, and then just do a couple of different ovals around that, and it'll create the same effect. Get a close up on that one. Now for smooth. Smooth is probably one of the easiest textures to recreate because a piece of paper is already naturally smooth. So I'm going to draw an apple to show something smooth. A leaf. And the easiest way to create a smooth texture is just by adding a little piece that looks like a little bit of shine. I made a little curved kind of rectangle, and it gives the illusion of a surface being very smooth and shiny. I can do the same thing with a cup. Say I have a mug, and then you just do the little rectangle. The same effect. So for these two, again, I did my initial oval, made my kind of eye shape around that, followed that shape throughout. And for me, I did a different line to make it look more continual. But again, you can always just do your ovals around that initial dot and it'll create the same effect. Smooth, it's easiest to do smooth when you have an actual object that you're trying to portray. So like I said, I picked an apple in a mug. I made my apple and then I just gave it a little curved rectangle to give the effect of a kind of shine and smoothness associated with it. And then I didn't put any other kind of marks within the apple because that would lose the illusion. All right, now we're going to do feathers. I love drawing feathers, something I've recently been practicing more. And I'm just going to do I'm going to make this into two sections. I'm going to do one big feather and then I'll do a couple small feathers over here. You're going to start with a line. I usually make my lines curved, but you do not have to. You can always make it straight. And then for those of you who have done these before, we're kind of going to do the same process that we do when we make a tree. And that we're going to bring our lines out and curved. Out and curved. Out and curved. Out and curved. And I usually have my lines touch each other. I think it gives a little bit more of a realistic effect when you do that because feathers, all the little areas always end up touching each other. I'll give it a little point. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I just make curved line, curved line, curved line, curved line, curved line, curved line. Like that. And then we have a pretty decent feather. I'm just adding a little bit just to make it look a little bit more even on both sides. I'm just adding a little bit of fringe. Yeah. Now for smaller feathers, so I'm going to make my curved lines that are supposed to be kind of like the stems of a feather and kind of group them together. Then just like before, I'm going to go up curved, up and curved, up and curved on all of them. Up and curved. And that's really it. That's the whole process, is just making little lines. And I connected them over here, but you can also do it where they don't connect and you're just making your up and curved lines and you'll get the same effect and it'll look really realistic. You want to make sure that you're curving all your lines in the same direction. And by curving them, they're naturally going to touch a little bit, so that effect gets achieved pretty easily. Okay. So as you can see, I have my big feather and I have my little feathers, like so. Now for a wavy texture. So wavy is simple. All you're going to do is a couple of wavy lines. So I make my kind of curved, kind of wavy lines. And you want to make sure you go in the you follow the same direction all the way through. That's what's going to give it the most uniform and best looking effect. Like that. So for the feathers, I made my initial line, which I would call the stem of the feather. And then for the rest of it, you just make curved lines going in one direction all the way up. Now, one more thing. You do want your lines at the bottom to be a little bit longer than your lines up top. That gives it a kind of angled. Let me show you guys a feather. Okay. So here's a feather. This one doesn't do the curve, but as you can see, you have the stem, and then all of your little lines will go up and over, and it makes a feather. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to crosshatched. In this one, we just make lots of X's. So I'm going to start down here, and I'm just going to make X's in whatever way, direction they end up falling. I'm really just making a bunch of diagonal lines. So it might be the easiest thing to do is to start going this way with your diagonal lines and then to start. And then you go in the opposite way with your diagonal lines. It'll make a whole bunch of different little X's, which help us in creating a cross-hatched texture. And you can always add more lines or take some away. And then last but not least, we have spotted. So I'm sure you guys know how to draw spots. Spots should never be just like good normal circles. Spots that are created naturally on like dogs and animals usually have a kind of more of an oval, just a different, not a direct circle. Now you can have the occasional circle, but I always make my spots like I'll have like that kind of shape. You can make like that. You just kind of want to make yourself some, not necessarily random, but different kinds of shapes, because spots are very rarely just perfect circles. They're usually more ovally. And then another thing that I always add in my spots, kind of like how a cheetah has, I usually add another little oval on the inside. I think it makes it look a little bit more realistic. But you do not have to add the spot in the middle. I'll leave that one. I'm done. That is another thing. You don't have to necessarily shade it, and you can just add like a little white circle. And there we have it. I think that's all of them. So we started with soft, which was, we put our pencil to the side and shaded the whole box in, giving it in what I would call a soft texture. We did hard with the brick wall. We made 3 horizontal lines and then went in the middle of each of those horizontal lines. And well, for the top, we made our 3 initial bricks. And then with the rest of them, we just went in the middle, 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 middle with vertical lines. Then for fuzzy/furry, you just make different lines all going in the same direction. You don't want to just scribble, because that won't create the right effect. Your lines should have a start and an end, start and an end, start and an end. And it's always best if you try to have all of your lines going in the same general direction. Ruff was just like little dashes and dot marks that I made with my pencil. Scalloped was little U's, so I made a U, 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 U. And then just like the bricks, I went in the middle of each U. And I made another U. So U, 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 etc. Bumpy, different kinds and sizes of circles. Woven, I made 2 long horizontal lines. And then with my vertical lines, I made the effect of going over and under by stopping short here and then bringing it over on this horizontal line. And then I just erased the part in the middle. That would make it look like this was going over. Jagged was a series of triangles in a way where you just make different little peaks and sizes of triangles. For wood, I started with my little filled in oval, then followed that shape throughout. Made that one, and then you make another oval and another oval and another oval until your whole box is filled, essentially. Now, again, I chose to have mine go kind of off the page as if there's more wood to be seen, but the several different oval will suffice. Then I have smooth, where I drew an apple, and then I just made a little curved rectangle in order to give the effect of something being shiny or smooth and unblemished. Then I made my feathers, where I made the feather stem, and then I did several lines that went up and curved, up and curved, up and curved, and by doing this, I created a fairly realistic looking feather. Same thing for the little feathers, just same process. You start with the stem, and then you go up and curved, up and curved, up and curved. Sometimes they will touch, sometimes they do not. The same effect happens either way, and they both look very good and very realistic. Wavy, I just made some curvy, wavy lines. Crosshatched. This one I messed up a little bit, so I apologize. But in general, you would make all of your diagonal lines going in one direction. And then you would cross those diagonal lines in the opposite direction, making a whole bunch of little X's or diamonds. They look like diamonds more. And then for spotted, I just made different kinds of ovals, circles, kind of weird shapes like this. And then I made a little fill in, but you do not have to do that. It looks just as good without the fill in or with this little like blank circle. Okay, so those are all of some of the different textures that I'm going over with you guys. So what you guys will be doing, like I said, on your sheets, and on the right side of your sheets, you are going to choose the texture that you were trying to emulate. So like fuzzy, furry, and then in the left box, you are going to show me it. So you're going to draw what that texture looks like. You know, do your best. I'm not expecting the world from you guys. I just want to see you genuinely try to achieve these different kinds of textures and do your best, because this will be really useful for you if you continue to do art in the future, to know how to create different textures and how to make things look like something else more realistically. Like if I was going to draw a bird, I would use my feather method to create a more realistic looking bird. So those are those textures again. Look. And you guys can pick whichever 4 or 5 you want. Again, just do your best. I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all come up with, and I'll see you next time. Talk to you later. Have any questions, please message me. Bye.